Hi, One Lit Teacher here. Today I'm going to talk about Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and specifically about the characterization of Romeo, whom I believe Shakespeare has used to make fun of the Petrarchan love tradition. If you have not seen my video on the sonnet tradition, you should check it out on my channel, One Lit Teacher, and that will give you a little idea about Petrarch and his sonnets. But in short, Petrarch was an important Italian Renaissance poet. He invented the sonnet, and he wrote hundreds of poems to a woman named Laura, whom he met at church, and whom was already married. And he talks about his love for her and how he can't have her, and he worships her essentially from afar. And she fits some very particular female attributes, which you might recognize in Disney characters and models and sort of our obsession with one particular type of beauty in modern day. The Petrarchan lady, she is blonde and she has ivory skin and roses like cheeks and so on. And the Petrarchan lover is wounded by her. And Romeo really is that character in this play. And I think that Shakespeare is reacting to a lot of the sonnet tradition through this character Romeo. And you might be thinking, but wait, Romeo didn't love Juliet from afar. He got her pretty quickly. It only took 4 days from the beginning to the end of their relationship. But I am going to present to you the idea that in making fun of Romeo as a Petrarchan lover, we should also get the idea that their love is doomed because it's not based on anything real. So I'm going to start with a slide I borrowed from my sonnet tradition video, in which I have laid out some of the qualities of the Petrarchan lover, who is the poet in the case of Petrarch and some other famous sonneteers who are writing about their love for the unattainable woman. He is wounded by Cupid's arrow, so there are lots of mythological references to Cupid. He is hopelessly in love with the unattainable woman. He is the despondent victim of unrequited love, and what that means is unreturned love. He is willing to prove his love by performing insurmountable deeds, and he alternately praises and curses his lady. So I'm going to run through some of these qualities and apply them to Romeo in both his love for Rosaline and his love for Juliet. You might have already forgotten that Romeo was at first in love with another woman who happened to be Romeo's cousin Rosaline. And to me, this just really underscores what Shakespeare is saying, that Romeo doesn't really know what love is. He's sort of stuck in this model that's been laid out for him by some other poets like Petrarch and Philip Sidney and others that Shakespeare might be actually mocking here through this character. Romeo is a poet. You might recognize in his language that he rhymes a lot and uses puns. And when Benvolio and Mercutio make fun of him, they bring up these qualities. For example, in Act 2, when they're looking for him after the party, Mercutio says, "Romeo, humors, madman, passion, lover, appear thou in the likeness of a sigh. Speak but one rhyme and I am satisfied. Cry but I, me, pronounce but love and dove." These guys know him well. They are his best friends after all. And they are saying he is a poet with his head in the clouds like a Petrarchan lover. Benvolio says, "Here come Romeo, here comes Romeo." And Mercutio replies, "Without his roe, like a dried herring." And he says he is fishified. And this is kind of an unfortunate pun about his being overwhelmed by his love for a woman. But what I think is interesting about this is there's almost a knock-knock joke here. What is Romeo without his roe? Me-oh. He is forlorn. He is wounded by Cupid's arrow, and there are a number of references to that mythological god in this play. So famously, Mercutio says in Act 2, when he's concerned about the prospect of Romeo agreeing to fight Tybalt, he says, "Alas, poor Romeo, he is already dead, stabbed with a white wench's black eye, run through the ear with a love song, the very pin of his heart, cleft with the blind bow boy's butt shaft. And is he a man to encounter Tybalt?" And of course, the blind bow boy is Cupid, and the butt shaft of his arrow is what Mercutio is referring to here. Also, when Romeo and Benvolio talk, they play around with this idea of being struck by Cupid's arrow. Romeo says, in sadness, cousin, I do love a woman. Benvolio, I aim so near when I supposed you loved. A right good markman, and she is fair, I love. A right mark, fair coz, is sooner hit. And then Romeo concludes this little banter with, well, in that hit you miss, she'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. She hath Dian's wit. So she has not been hit by Cupid's arrow and refuses to be, but Romeo has been struck by Cupid's arrow. And Mercutio says, you are a lover, on the way to the party, borrow Cupid's wings and soar with them above a common bound. And Romeo says, but I'm too sore and pierced with his shaft. So Romeo has already been struck by Cupid's arrow. And by the way, in mythology, this is a form of sickness, madness. It does not make sense, this love that people have as a result by being struck by Cupid's arrow. Romeo is hopelessly in love with the unattainable woman. I mentioned that Rosaline a moment ago. He says of Rosaline again, she'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. She hath Dian's wit, and in strong proof of chastity, well armed from love's weak childish bow, she lives uncharmed. She will not stay the siege of love's loving terms, nor bide the encounter of assailing eyes, nor ope her lap to saint seducing gold. Romeo says, I can't even buy her. She's not even interested in my wealth. And Rosaline, remember, is a Capulet. This automatically makes her unattainable. He could not possibly have a relationship with the offspring of his sworn enemy. But wait a minute. Juliet is another Capulet. Romeo is drawn to that which he cannot have. He is hopelessly in love with the unattainable woman. He does get Juliet, but then we know how that turns out. Romeo is the despondent victim of unrequited or unreturned love. Again, Montague at the beginning of the play talks about how Romeo is so depressed and locks away fair daylight and locks himself in his room, making an artificial night. Again, Romeo says Rosaline will not be hit with Cupid's arrow, and Mercutio says, alas, poor Romeo, he's already dead, and so on. Romeo also says, on the way to the party, I have a soul of lead, so stakes me to the ground, I cannot move. He is so wounded and debilitated by this love that he essentially cannot go on, is the idea. He is willing to prove his love by performing insurmountable deeds. I'm going to say Romeo is in love with the idea of love. And so he tries to win his woman by doing these outrageous deeds. In Romeo's case, this applies to his beginning of the relationship with Juliet, again, another Capulet. Romeo climbs the orchard walls. He throws himself into a place where he could be killed if he's found. He says, with love's light wings did I o'er-perch these walls, for stony limits cannot hold love out. And what love can do, that dares love attempt. Therefore thy kinsmen are no stop to me. So it's almost like a knight on his steed fighting the dragon. And he again ascends to Juliet's chamber via the rope ladder on the wedding night and is willing to risk being caught again and even put to death, because Romeo knows that you've got to do these things that a knight would do for his lady. And again, he does get the girl in this case, but the fact that their relationship only lasts a total sum of 4 days might be Shakespeare's way of saying this was not realistic to begin with. It was not true love, and this Petrarchan love tradition is pretty ridiculous, really. Romeo alternately praises and curses his lady. So again, with Rosaline, he talks about how great she is, but also how damaging she is to him. He says, she hath in that sparing made huge waste, for beauty starved with her severity cuts beauty off from all posterity. She is too fair, too wise, wisely too fair to merit bliss by making me despair. She hath forsworn to love, and in that vow do I live dead that live till now. His love of her has literally killed him, he is saying. Again, she has sworn to live chaste, and this is what has ruined Romeo for about 2 seconds until he meets Juliet. And then he praises her. She is like the sun, and arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who we can assume is Rosaline. And he talks about all these light sources that Juliet will smother with her glowing light and so on. But would he have started to curse her alternately as well? Perhaps. He only knows her for 4 days. If the relationship went on much longer, maybe it wouldn't have worked out. Sorry to squash your ideas about love at first sight and all of that, but I really believe Shakespeare is making fun of this Petrarchan lover idea in this play and through this character named Romeo. Romeo uses the tropes of a Petrarchan love poet to characterize Juliet very clearly in the balcony scene in Act 2. So you could run through the list of the Petrarchan lady qualities and see many of them here in Juliet. She is a celestial light source. He says, "But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun." And he says, "Two of the fairest stars in all of heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their sphere till they return." What if her eyes were there, they in her head? The brightness of her cheeks would shame those stars as daylight doth a lamp. Her eye in heaven would through the airy region stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. It's a beautiful sentiment, but come on, it's really silly. And I think Shakespeare is actually making fun of this Petrarchan tradition. Oh, speak again, bright angel. And he does worship her from afar, from on the ground while she is on the balcony. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek. It's really very melodramatic. Romeo is a drama queen in truth, if truth be known. And once he achieves this love, it's almost instantly over because it's doomed from the beginning and it really cannot endure. Shakespeare, again, may be saying through these characters that true love is not something that happens in a flash. Shakespeare is mocking the Petrarchan tradition. Friar Lawrence says, "Young men's love then lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes." And I think Shakespeare is saying that through this play. So is this the greatest love story of all time? A tale about love at first sight? Is love really the most important theme in this play? Or is this play a cautionary tale about the foolishness of young love? I'll let you decide, but I'm sure you know where I stand on this matter. If you are interested in more ideas about Romeo and Juliet, including important themes, how Shakespeare uses different type of language, please check out my other videos on my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher, and please subscribe.